Welcome to this weekly English news bulletin on ROJAVA. The freedom fighter and world's most famous political prisoner, Nelson Mandela, died on 5th of December at the age of 95. With his departure, the Kurdish people lost one of his freedom struggle supporters. The freedom fighter, prisoner and South Africa's symbol of struggle against racial oppression, that was Nelson Mandela, who emerged from prison after 27 years to lead his country out of decades of apartheid. On Thursday, 5th of December, the former South Africa's President Nelson Mandela died at the age of 95. In a televised address, the country's President Jacob Zuma announced his death.
Our people have lost a father. Although we knew that this day would come, nothing can diminish our sense of a profound and enduring loss. Our thoughts are with the millions of people across the world who embraced Madiba as their own. Our nation has lost its greatest son. Yet, what made Nelson Mandela great was precisely what made him human.
Nelson Mandela was one of the supporters of the Kurdish people's struggle. In April 2009, the lawyer of Nelson Mandela visited Turkey and spoke publicly of Nelson Mandela's support for the Kurdish people's freedom struggle. Isa Musa, visiting Turkey on official business, denounced the criminalization of the Kurdish freedom struggle and compared the Kurdish leader Öcalan to Nelson Mandela. Expressing Nelson Mandela's support for the Kurdish freedom struggle, he said, "Both Mandela and Öcalan have struggled for their people. They had been arrested in similar circumstances and held on island prisons," and noted that the Kurdish leader was even more isolated than Nelson Mandela had been. Even in 1992, Nelson Mandela refused to accept the Atatürk Peace Award because of the oppression of the Kurds by the Turkish government. On 6th of September 1997, at the Kurdish festival in Germany, Nelson Mandela sent a message to the Kurdish people in which he said, "I am a part of the Kurdish struggle, I am one of you."
We know what it means to be oppressed in our own country. We know what it means to be insulted in our own country. We know the pain of a mother whose children disappear. We know what it means for a child not to be taught in the language of his or her mother. We know what it means to have one's nationality and culture insulted. This is what the government of Turkey is doing to the Kurds. It is for this reason that I am not your visitor. I am not your guest. I am part of the Kurdish struggle. I am one of you. We know that the European community, and particularly Germany, use the excuse of terrorism and state security to stop a peace process. I want to tell them that President Nelson Mandela was also called a terrorist. Today he is the President of South Africa. I want to tell them that Robert Mugabe was called a terrorist. Today he is the President of Zimbabwe. President Samuel Joma was called a terrorist. Today he is the President of Namibia. My dearest friends and comrades, we hope that very soon that your leaders will be in your parliament in Kurdistan and you will have your own president. Our proposal to the world is very simple. If we want peace, then we must talk to the leaders of the Kurds. The war waged by Turkey is not only against PKK, it is also against human rights in Turkey. It is also a war against the masses, the workers and the labor movements. And it's a war against democracy in Turkey. Terrorism is used as an excuse to deny the human rights of the Kurds and also the people of Turkey. When I look at this gathering here, then I know that we sing and we dance. But like us before, I know that deep down in your heart, you have a desire to be free and to have self-determination. This dancing and singing here is your expression for a desire for your motherland. You do not want to be spread all over the world. You want to be in Kurdistan. Comrades, friends, the peace trade was stopped. But if I look at you here, I am convinced that nobody will be able to stop the determination of the Kurdish people to be free. Biji Sirok ANC. Biji Sirok Apo.
The Islamic State of Al-Iraq and the Sham kidnapped in the last few days more than 50 Kurds from the towns of Manbij and Jarablus. In meantime, the Islamic State is continuing its siege on Afrin region. Over the course of the week, the Islamic State has kidnapped at least 51 Kurds in the towns of Manbij and Jarablus. Among the hostages are children and women. The current whereabouts of 51 hostages are unknown, while the names of 20 hostages have been known. In July, the Islamic State of Al-Iraq and the Sham kidnapped some 200 Kurdish civilians from the Kurdish towns of Tal Arran and Tal Hasal. Only a few of those hostages have since been released. On the other hand, Afrin town of ROJAVA, which embraced thousands of Arabic and Kurdish refugees, mainly from Aleppo fleeing violence, has been sealed for more than 6 months by armed groups like the Islamic State of Al-Iraq and Asham. Afrin city, which was already facing huge problems in accommodating refugees, is cut off from Aleppo and is also isolated from the outside world. The intense blockade of Afrin since 6 months has caused a great shortage of fuel, food, medicine and other subsidies. Cities' markets lack most of the basic supplies. The remaining supplies in Afrin's markets are being sold with high prices that cannot be afforded by residents. The Constitutive Assembly of ROJAVA administration met for the second time in Qamishlo city since its formation. The Assembly took a number of decisions, from which establishing 3 autonomous regions of Jizir, Kobane and Afrin. The ROJAVA Constitutive Assembly of the Interim Administration met in Qamishlo city following its first meeting on November 12th. After the meeting, the Assembly issued a statement in which a number of decisions were revealed. The name of the interim administration is changed to Democratic Autonomous Administration. Interim administration will be established in the cantons of Afrin, Kobane and Jizir within the framework of 3 autonomous regions. In the former administration project, the 3 cantons were connected to a parliament. Taking current war conditions and ROJAVA geography into account, it is not possible to connect the cantons administratively. Therefore, each canton will have its own separate autonomous administration. Jizir Democratic Autonomous Administration, Kobane Democratic Autonomous Administration, Afrin Democratic Autonomous Administration. The Interim Administration General Council's name has been changed to Legislative and Monitoring Committee, which will be responsible for implementing statutes and decisions. The name of the 19-person Interim Administration Project Monitoring Committee that was formed in the first meeting has been changed to the Interim Administration Preparation and Monitoring Committee. Aldar Khalil, a member of the Supreme Kurdish Council who attended the meeting, stated that a general autonomous administration will be discussed when conditions are suitable. The new formation does not mean that the 3 cantons will be disconnected from each other. The nature of the relations between the autonomous regions will be later discussed. According to Khalil, after the formation of these regional autonomous administrations, the next move will be toward a common administration between the 3 cantons. Moreover, Khalil claimed that this ROJAVA administrative model could be implemented in the remaining Syrian liberated areas. The European United Left Nordic Green Left European Parliamentary Group hosted at 4th and 5th of December the 10th conference on EU, Turkey and the Kurds at the European Parliament, entitled with Turkey, the Kurds and the Imrali Peace Process, an Historic Opportunity. Opening the 2 days conference, the EU-Turkey Civic Commission President Karina Westerheim said it is not enough for the European Union to say we support the current process of talks in northern Kurdistan and Turkey. Acts should follow words, she added, and one of these acts could be lifting the PKK from the terrorist organizations list. Conference participants discussed also the developments in ROJAVA. In this regard, the People Democratic Party co-chair Artoğlu Kurukçu called on Turkey to stop immediately its support to the armed groups attacking ROJAVA. PYD's co-chair Salah Muslim spoke also at the conference and called on the European countries to support the Kurds in ROJAVA who are seeking to build a democratic society. Moreover, some conference participants spoke to Ronahi about the ROJAVA revolution.
None of us know what the outcome of the Syrian war will be, but it is very possible that the state which we have known as Syria, for the last decades, no longer really exists. And if it is no longer going to really exist, then the emergence of this Kurdish autonomy is very, very promising indeed. This northeast Syria, Kurdish area, which I visited and reported from 6 months ago, is the most quiet and the most peaceful and the best administered area of Syria today. And this, I think, does credit to the Kurdish rulers of that area, and also it is of real historical and or potentially of real political and historical significance, given that Syria may not reunite. So this entity, ROJAVA as the Kurds call it, could well be a new permanent or long-term addition to the map of the locality, of the region.
That's the problem. The United States sees the PYD as too closely related to the PKK, a terrorist organization that is seeking to divide Syria, and so the United States opposes the PYD, which I do not think is smart, since the PYD is basically a pro-Western secular group, and some group the United States should be supporting instead of opposing.
The problem in Syria with governance is the over-centralization of power in Damascus. Now is the time to start talking about a new constitutional arrangement that decentralizes power through federal or autonomy arrangements, so that minority groups like the Kurds can control their own affairs in the fields of governance and economy and culture. That's the only way that groups in Syria are going to be able to coexist in the future.
To discuss the latest developments in Kurdistan and the region, sociologist Mrs. Nazan Ustandagh will join us now live from Istanbul. Thank you very much, Mrs. Ustandagh, for speaking to Ronahi. Before discussing the Kurdish issue, I would like to start with you, with the death of Nelson Mandela, the freedom fighter. What does Nelson Mandela mean to you, Mrs. Ustandagh?
Well, like forever, he was very important for, as an example of freedom fighters, and he was an important example of peace process.
It seems we have a technical problem. Mrs. Ustandagh, we will come to you later in the course of this bulletin. In an interview with Associated France Press, PYD's co-chair Salah Muslim said that Kurds and ROJAVA are seeking an autonomous Kurdish region in a federal Syria and not separation. Moreover, he revealed that there are 3 sorts of Arabs living among Kurds of ROJAVA. PYD's co-chair Salah Muslim said in an interview with Associated France Press that PYD's objective in future Syria is forming an autonomous Kurdish region in a federal Syria and not separation. Muslim added that ROJAVA will be divided into 3 autonomous provinces: Kobani in central, Afrin to the west, and Qamishlo to the east. Moreover, PYD's co-chair Muslim referred in his interview to the continuing clashes with armed groups and said that groups attacking ROJAVA are supported by the Turkish government. Muslims stated that Syria's Kurds wish to live in peace with Arabs who do not seek to wage war against them. He went on saying, "There are three sorts of Arabs living among Kurds in ROJAVA. There are those with whom we have always lived and who we have fought alongside. We defend the brotherhood between these peoples," he said. There are those who are not the original inhabitants of ROJAVA. They are Arabs who came from other countries. The jihadists who have burned our houses and decapitated Kurds. Finally, there are Arabs who were moved to Kurdistan forcibly by the Syrian regime, aiming to Arabize the region. According to Muslim, these Arabs were victims of the Syrian regime policies, therefore we advocate a peaceful solution for this group. Those who can return to their hometowns should do it so, and those who are not able to move to their hometowns can stay in ROJAVA and live in peace with the Kurds. Most of the Arabs who were moved forcibly to ROJAVA by the Syrian regime were housed in the Kurdish cities and villages on the ROJAVA northern Kurdistan border. This way, the Ba'ath regime created an Arab belt along the border. After the declaration of the United Arab Republic in 1958, ethnic and religious minorities, among them Kurds, were closely watched by the Arab authorities. The Ba'ath Party, who came in power on March 1963 in Syria, continued these policies. After 7 months of ruling Syria, the Ba'ath regime conducted a study about Jazir province to shed light on the national, social and political aspects of the region. Mohammed Talal Hilal, a regime lieutenant serving in ROJAVA, was appointed to conduct the study. Hilal described the Kurds of ROJAVA in his study as people that do not have a history, civilization, neither a language. He described them as a destructive force. He proposed in his study a 12-point plan to eliminate the Kurdish threat in Syria once and for all. Some of these points were: displacing the Kurds from their area to the interior, replacing Kurds near ROJAVA northern Kurdistan border with Arabs, denying Kurds all types of jobs to prompt them to immigrate and leave the country, militarizing northern Jazir region by establishing military units whose tasks are settling Arabs and evacuating Kurds, waging a wide-scale anti-Kurdish propaganda campaign among Arabs in the region, and replacing the Kurdish religious figures with Arabs. In 1965, the Ba'ath Party considered Hilal's plan and implemented it in 1973 when Tabqadan flooded and made tens of thousands of Arab families homeless. These families have been housed in the Kurdish cities and villages in masses. New villages were constructed and the lands of Kurds were given to newly settled Arab families. These policies have forced more than 150,000 Kurds to migrate from their lands. On this way, the Ba'ath regime created an Arab belt along the ROJAVA northern Kurdistan border, aimed to Arabize the region and separate the Kurds of ROJAVA from the Kurds of northern Kurdistan. These Arabization policies implemented by Ba'ath regime on ROJAVA are continuing by the Syrian political and military opposition. In order to change the demography of ROJAVA and to prevent Kurds to obtain their rights in Syria's future, the Syrian opposition are continuing the same Ba'ath regime's Arabization policies on ROJAVA. Since the start of the Syrian revolution, some of the Syrian political opposition are contributing to the Arabization policies by denying the Kurdish existence in ROJAVA. According to this opposition, Kurds are living only in Syria in mixed Kurdish Arabic areas. On their part, some of the armed opposition groups also took the task of Arabizing ROJAVA upon themselves after the weakness of the Syrian regime in the Kurdish areas. In Qamishlo city, the armed opposition groups of the Islamic State and Al-Nusra Front are settling Arabs from the Syrian cities such as Deir ez-Zor and Aleppo in ROJAVA by buying houses and placing them. The Kurdish city of Tel Abyad is facing also similar policies. The armed opposition groups have settled in recent months hundreds of Arabs of Raqqa, Homs, Hama and Aleppo cities in 250 houses belonging to the Kurdish families. To-date, Kurds in Tel Abyad city are forcibly being evacuated or are threatened to be liquidated, like the 70 people who were massacred in the city. Even the Kurds in Aleppo's Kurdish neighborhoods, Al-Shafiya and Sheikh Maqsoud, have been subject to these policies. Attacks were deliberately launched on civilians of the Kurdish neighborhoods, forcing them to leave. Across ROJAVA border in southern Kurdistan, a very similar Arabization campaign took place when the Kurds of the oil-rich Kirkuk were being deported to southern provinces of Iraq in military trucks and Arabs were moved in. In 1975, an Iraqi official admitted that 50,000 Iraqi Kurds had been deported to the desert areas southern Iraq. Northern Kurdistan also witnessed the same policies when 3,000 villages were destroyed and their inhabitants were forced to leave the Kurdish areas to Turkey or abroad. Going now back to Mrs. Nazan Ostundar from Istanbul. Welcome again, Mrs. Ostundar, to our show. Before discussing the Kurdish issue, I would like to start with you with the death of Nelson Mandela, the freedom fighter. What does Nelson Mandela mean to you, Mrs. Ostundar?
Well, he's definitely a very important figure as a freedom fighter, but for me, more important is his contribution to setting international standards for what a peace process looks like. He has been very influential in coming up with a variety of mechanisms that facilitate a peace process, like truth commissions, like other kinds of things, and he has also been very, very supportive of women's participation in the peace process. So I am, of course, I admire him as a freedom fighter, but I also admire him as a person who has set international standards for peace processes all over the world.
Let's move on to the peace process going on in Turkey and northern Kurdistan. What is your reading of the peace process, which is currently at a stalemate?
Yes, we are. I mean, it's very difficult to make definite statements because the peace process, especially on the part of the Turkish government, is not going very transparent. But as far as I understand, I think it will be in a stalemate until March, until the local elections are over. Understanding, I'm assuming that until local elections, not much is going to go forward, and both parties, Peace and Democracy Party and the Justice and Development Party, are going to concentrate on the local elections. But what happened, of course, yesterday in Gever, two men got killed by the police forces during a protest. So that's very worrisome. But I hope this is not, in a sense, a declaration of war again against civilian Kurds. Rather, it's the police. I mean, it's limited to the police.
In one of your studies, you argued that in order to proceed the peace process, it is necessary that the Turkish government provides the means for women to participate in the peace process. Why is women participation in the peace process so important, Mrs. Ostundar?
Well, there are several reasons. One of them is women are affected by war different than men. So women's issues have to be on the tables. Especially I mean, not only in Kurdistan, but in a lot of countries when there has been state terrorism, like what the Turkish state did, women are disproportionately affected because of forced displacement, forced disappearance, rape, harassment. So that's one of the reasons why women have to be there. Second, women compose 50% of the population. So without women giving their consent to this agreement, there is not going to be much support. And third, of course, men tend to keep secrets, like Turkish, if you think about the 30 years of war, thousands and millions of Turkish men have done their military service in Kurdistan, and they are keeping government secrets, they are keeping state secrets, they are hiding the truth from the public. And it's very important for women to enter into this scene so that truth can be recovered, that truth can be spoken about.
To Rojava. On one hand, the people of Rojava are facing attacks from groups like the Islamic State and Al-Nusra Front, and on the other hand, they are governing themselves. What is your take on these developments in Rojava, Mrs. Ustandagh?
Can you repeat it, please?
I want to ask you about the Rojava revolution. On one hand, the people of Rojava are facing attacks from groups like the Islamic State and Al-Nusra, and on the other hand, they are governing themselves. What is your take on these developments in Rojava?
Well, we are very interested in Rojava, especially as women. But Rojava people have I am hearing my voice. That's why I stutter. I'm sorry for that. Okay, I will continue though.
Okay.
Yeah, we are very much interested in the Rojava revolution, especially as women, and we had guests last week here. We discussed a lot about the Rojava revolution, and we admire especially women's participation in it. I think what makes Rojava revolution so distinctive, so special, is that it's built from down, from people. Its power comes from the people rather than from some leaders or some restricted elite section of society. The whole society is organized until the smallest section. That's what I understand, and that's going to, of course, give a lot of power, a lot of. It's going to provide a lot of defense mechanism against all these attacks.
Going back to Turkey, what is Turkish government vision on the Kurdish issue in the region in general? How will Turkey deal with the Kurdish issue in the future, Mrs. Ustandagh?
Okay, once again, it's very difficult to predict, but from the Barzani meeting and from other developments in Turkey, it seems like that Turkey wants to build a more alliance on the Barzani line. It wants to develop a Kurdish political actor in northern Kurdistan, which will follow Barzani's line, because, as you know, the Turkish government has now signed several agreements with Barzani. So we are expecting that that's going to be their way of dealing with the issue. Less PKK, more Barzani.
Mrs. Nazan Ustandagh, you've been with us from Istanbul. Thank you very much for speaking to Ronahi.
Okay, thank you.
According to the Norwegian Defense Research Establishment and the Washington Post, the number of European fighters has sharply increased in the past 6 months, with France, Germany, United Kingdom, Belgium and the Netherlands as the main supporters or suppliers.
Since 2011, large numbers of European Muslims have gone to Syria to fight alongside the rebels. Writing in the Monkey Cage blog, political scientist Thomas Heckhammer of the Norwegian Defense Research Establishment said that the number of foreign fighters from Europe in Syria is historically unprecedented. Heckhammer put the total number of foreign fighters in Syria to over 1,100 low estimates, with the high estimates bringing the figure to over 1,700. He listed 12 countries as probably the main suppliers of foreign fighters to Syria, with France, Germany, United Kingdom, Belgium and the Netherlands being the main suppliers. In this regard, the Washington Post said a new wave of Europeans is heading to Syria. The Western Europe-based rebels, mostly young men, are being recruited by new networks that arrange their travel. The 11 Western European countries with the biggest contingents in Syria are estimated to have some 1,200 to 1,700 people among rebel forces, according to government and analyst figures compiled by the Associated Press. That compares to estimates of 600 to 800 from those countries in late spring. The United States has also sounded the alarm about young Americans headed to Syria. But distance and expense have kept the numbers far lower. About 20 American citizens, according to the International Center for the Study of Radicalization and Political Violence.
The UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said that so far no decision has been made on the list of participants in Geneva II conference. In the meantime, Kurds of ROJAVA are increasing their support and demand for the participation of the Supreme Kurdish Council in the conference.
UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon so far has not made a decision on the list of participants in a peace conference on Syria that is scheduled for January 22nd, but still believes that Iran should be among the invited parties. He made this statement at a news conference in Lima on Monday. The UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon added in his statement that the list of conference participants would be coordinated at a meeting that will be held in Geneva on December 20th with participation of the UN, Russian and US officials. At the meantime, Kurds and ROJAVA are increasing their support for the participation of the Supreme Kurdish Council in Geneva II conference, asking the international community to support the demand of Kurds and ROJAVA. In this regard, the Kurdish Democratic Left Party in Syria issued a statement confirming the importance of the Kurdish participation in the Geneva conference as an independent delegation. According to the party, Kurds should go to Geneva with a project that embodies the national interest of Kurdish people. Nizam Ala ad-Din Ayoub, a member of the Kurdish Democratic Unity Party in Syria, stressed also in an interview with Hawar news agency the need of the Kurdish people to participate in Geneva conference separately from the Syrian Arabic opposition. As according to Ayoub, the Syrian opposition till now do not recognize the Kurdish rights and existence in Syria. So going with them to Geneva will mean that the Kurdish issue in Syria will remain the same or become worse.
According to the human rights activist news agency, 6 prisoners in Iran entered the 27th day of hunger strike, while at least 1,800 other prisoners of Unit 2 in Qizil Hasar prison are on their 12th day of fast.
According to the human rights activist news agency, on 25th of November, at least 1,800 prisoners in Unit 2 of Qizil Hasar, largest Iranian prison, went on hunger strike. The protest began after the transfer of yet another 11 prisoners of the unit to the place of their execution. The news agency added the 6 prisoners of conscience who have been sentenced to death are on their 27th day of hunger strike. The prisoners are Hame Ahmadi, Kamal Moulayi, Jimshid Dehgani, Jahangir Dehgani, Siddiq Mohammadi, Sayyid Hadi Husseini. The families of these 6 prisoners have sent letters to the office of Sayyid Ali Khamenei and Hassan Rouhani appealing for a fair retrial. The German government condemned the increasing number of executions in Iran. The Office of the German Human Rights Oversight issued an official report strongly condemning the violation of human rights in Iran and saying, since the Rouhani presidency in Iran, more than 200 people have been executed. While the Amnesty International had highlighted that human rights in Iran have remained a low priority despite earlier promises made during the presidential campaign.
The ROJAVA administration is continuing its meetings to establish a social accord, while the Christians in Tel Tamr celebrated the St. Barbara's Day.
The commission appointed by the Constituent Board of the ROJAVA administration to discuss and prepare a social accord is continuing its meetings with representatives of different components of ROJAVA. The commission is aiming to establish the main principles of a social accord. In this regard, in the town of Derbeysiye, the Democratic Society movement held a series of meetings with Kurdish Arab tribes and social groups. According to the citizens of Tulkocher city, which was liberated on 26 of October from armed groups, 60% of its citizens turned back to the city. The citizens who spoke to Ronahi said that the SAH police forces are protecting the people of Tulkocher and ensuring security and stability. For this purpose, after the liberation of Tulkocher, People Defense Unit started a campaign to clean up the city and its surroundings from mines and bombs planted by the Al-Nusra Front and the Islamic State of Al-Iraq and the Sham. The Christians of Tel Tamer city celebrated on 30th of November the Saint Barbara's Day in honor of the Christian saint and martyr Barbara. Some of the Tel Tamer Christians gathered in Saint Maria Club and celebrated the day.
The amendments made on the ROJAVA administration, which were announced over the course of the week, gained a wide media attention. More in the next report.
The American Pittsburgh Post-Gazette wrote about the latest developments in Kurdistan and entitled an article with "Rising Kurdistan, the United States should accept the inevitable." As a result of the latest developments in the Middle East, the Kurds, previously a minority in several countries, are moving steadily toward establishing their own nation. The creation of a separate Kurdistan appears to be inevitable. However, the United States should get used to it rather than maintain a policy of opposition. The Voice of Russia wrote about the new amendments in the ROJAVA administration and said Kurds seek autonomy in federal Syria. Syria's Democratic Union Party, the country's most powerful Kurdish group, hopes to create an autonomous Kurdish region in a federal Syria. The Administration Commission is in the process of preparing a constitution. The Hurriyet Daily News wrote also about the amendments made in the ROJAVA administration and conveyed what PYD's co-chair Saleh Muslim had said, that the goal of the autonomous region is not to secede but unifying Syria more. The Kurds want a federal system in Syria. The American Al Jazeera wrote about the implementation of the ROJAVA administration and said, Syrian Kurds Hamrin Sharif and her groom Rasho Suleiman signed the country's first civil marriage contract under new laws administered by the ruling Kurdish Democratic Union Party. From now on, the municipality of Qamishlo will sign the contracts of all who wish to marry. BuzzFeed World website wrote about Women Defense Unit's role in ROJAVA war and went on saying that Syria's Kurdish region is dominated by a political party known as PYD that stresses equality for men and women in both politics and war. The Swedish journalist Karol Drott wrote for the Garnaki Middle East Research Center about Christians living in Qamishlo and said, while the Syriacs in this area have been able to stick together as a community, they have maintained ambiguous relations with the regime. Some Syriacs clearly support the regime, but others are strongly against it.
That's all for this week. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.